Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. I have a very special guest here that I'm excited to have all the way from Italy, Alessandra Veronesi. She is an author, business coach, and relationship observer. After pursuing a career in marketing and an MBA in New York City, later spanning into Europe for more than 15 years in the insurance, software, and finance industries, she now resides in Italy. Her latest book, A New Banana, Unpeel Yourself and Elevate Your Relationships, is one of many upcoming projects dedicated to helping others see the light within themselves. Thank you so much for joining me today, Alessandra.
Thank you, Gina. It's an honor. I really love your podcast.
Oh,
Good.
thank you so much. And I want to know about your book and what inspired you to write this book, a little bit about your background and all the fun stuff about Alessandra.
So, um, well, I'm going to start with a general statement that maybe a lot of people can relate to, and that is that I think throughout my life, I always knew I wanted to write a book. Um, and that was just something vague and present in the back of my mind. And of course, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to write about. I would start and stop and start and stop. And um, this book really sprouted, though, from a moment that I wasn't looking to write a book. Basically, the short story is I worked in corporate. I followed the tried and true path of, college, job, second job, MBA while working, um, all the career type A moves that one can do. And fast forward 5 years ago, I moved to Italy. And actually, no, sorry, fast forward 3 years ago, we all had COVID. We all experienced the COVID situation. And essentially, I finally came to the realization of how disconnected I was living my life, and how much and at the time I wouldn't have been able to define this way, but how much my inner value was dependent on the external. So what am I making in my job? What am I doing? What are my goals? How am I meeting targets? And all of these trips. So I was working internationally, so I was flying all over the place. And COVID hit about 2 months after I ended, mutually I ended a 4-year relationship. So I was ultra alone. Which was fantastic from a universal standpoint. From a human point, you're like, this sucks, but the universe was like, yeah, big lessons coming. So I was home alone in my apartment in Italy. And I think it was about 2 weeks before I cracked. At first I'm like, okay, I can do this. This is fine. And like, global webinars and everybody's coming together and like all this stuff is going on that we remember. And then at one point, I just had like a really, really bad day. And, I think you realize in those moments how close you are on the line of sanity versus insanity. Um, just when you're alone, it's just incredible. Maybe now we're more used to it. Maybe COVID broke us in. I think at this point, after all of the work and the work I continue to do, I'd probably really love 2 weeks to myself this way. But at the time, it was a nightmare. I was directly confronted with myself. And so meditation found me. So, a friend of mine whispered to me, I've been following this account, you might want to try it. And so really I started doing it because I had nothing else to do. I was tired of drinking plus I was in Italy, so I was following like US times and Italy times for happy hours. And, of course, like we know that wasn't exactly like for the pleasures of drinking. It was very much a numbing thing. And so when I started meditating for an hour in the day, I learned to love myself. I mean, to see myself and love myself and feel myself in my own body. And at first it was really just 1 hour, but it started like just like expanding all around me. And so much so that I started just writing my own resolutions and how they were coming to me and how I was feeling. And so that became the first blueprint for the book, I wrote about 72 meditations, which were really reflective chats. And then I was sending them to friends through WhatsApp and, just trying to, hey, if this helps you too, like I've realized these things from my personal problem last week. And so it was like a variety of topics, and, it starts with finding yourself. And so, and that was 3 years ago. So then eventually the book is an elaboration of a lot of other modalities that came into my life. And as I began to explore other ways of connecting to myself and to my consciousness and to, the powers around us and like the dimensions around us, then more insights poured through, more neutrality poured through, less of a suffering frequency, like less of like, hey, I'm so sorry you're sad, and more like, the world is great, actually. Like, come in and join us in this area, So it took about 2.5 years to pull the book together. And really it's about, unpeeling yourself. So it's unpeel yourself, because basically at the end of it all, we just have so many socially constructed implications of who we need to be or what we need to be. And that's fine if we realize it's a story. But when we believe it so much and we take it so seriously, then we're the ones that suffer, because we're not seeing who we truly are, which is, a lot more simple yet complex than it needs to, than we see it as. So, or a lot more simple. Forget about the complex. The complexities are the beauty of life. But so this is how it all came about, basically.
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that. And believe me, banana sounds better than peeling off layers of an onion.
Right. Yeah. My mother suggested I should make it that. And I was like, well, sure. The concept is there. It's a bit, more predictable.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
and we
Yeah, I
are
know.
unpredictable. Why not be unpredictable and funny? And it's really meant to reflect also the humor of life. Again, like I think the more that I am working also now with clients that tend to be in the corporate profile, what I see from this external lens is just how seriously sometimes people take things. And it's like, it's not that serious. It's a game. Life is not all of it. Life itself is real and true, but everything we have around us right now, it's just a kind of a game. And
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
so it's
Yes.
cool.
A game is correct. And like, I love what you said. You have a great point. People do take life so seriously. And why? I wonder why. What is there? What is there to be so serious about? This is your life and have fun. And I think a lot of it was that we were conditioned, we were influenced, and we didn't go within, like you've mentioned before. We never really went within. And I love the fact that you brought up meditation because, and there's different forms of meditation. I was just learning about there's a form of meditation just using life as experiences as a meditation. I'm like, hey, yeah, that's a good point. But there are different avenues you can take with meditation. But I've learned when I've meditated, and I use it as prayer as well. That's my meditation time. And I will go ahead and just have my quiet time and breathe so comfortably. And then I'm starting to cry, and I notice like all these emotions coming out. And I'm like, what is this stuff coming out? Now, have you experienced any type of thing where you're just like your body's releasing something?
Yes. Definitely there have been times, and when that happens, it's kind of like it's funny because it's like on the one hand you sound like you're like ugly crying, and at the other hand you're like, but I'm feeling great, don't worry, like don't worry about me out here. I'm like, but it's good. Yes, absolutely. And I've done, and I've had it, suddenly for things that I recognize the reason behind it. Maybe one day I was meditating. I used to meditate with my dog, and I thought about her, and but it had been a year and a half since she had passed, and suddenly that day I mourned her. But I was like, this is really important. Like I needed to cry this. I was so strong for so long, or maybe, or maybe I tried to put a lens on it, like, yeah, her energy form has transformed, and and of course that is all true. But a part of me and my heart wanted to also release some sadness, and other times I've cried for planets. Like, in the
Yeah.
middle of a meditation, I'm like, I'm crying for the earth. And at first when this happened to me, I was still very much like in my business hat. And I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that I just put on a breath work meditation and suddenly I'm crying for the earth, as if it was like the biggest tragedy of my, something happened to like my closest friend, something like that. So I think there's definitely a place for releasing. Actually, I mean, it's the only way to make room for new things. So if you're going to renovate the house, you got to clear it out first if there's stuff in it. And
That's right.
accumulates, sometimes unbeknownst to us. And life is a constant cycle of releasing and welcoming and opening up and expanding so that we can make more room. So absolutely.
Expansion. Yeah, expansion is so big. And back to with the meditation, growing up, I was always told, "Hey, stop crying, don't cry," and all of that gets built up. And I never experienced like the type of release that I experienced. But once all that cry came out, like I was getting transformation. Some other shifts were happening. And I always say there's always going to be the trials before the triumph because we experience all these challenges that come into our lives. And people think, oh, it's just me, woe me, this. But I think all of us experience, and I don't like to single people out. And I always like to uplift people. And it's difficult to build that relationship with ourselves. And I wanted to go ahead and ask you, how would you describe your relationship with yourself and how has that evolved over the years?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. I want to be concise and then go into it. So I, I love I love myself. That's the answer. And and but it's unconditional. And so, unconditional love also means loving the sides of yourself that perhaps like you wouldn't show on a first date to someone, like you wouldn't tell someone that, it took you 3 days to throw out the garbage one time and it was by the door. But sometimes you do that. I mean, I do, it's okay. It's not my forte, but so it's, and I think, circling back also to like why people take themselves so seriously, at least in my case, it was certainly a case of um, not having a full vision of how much love I had within myself for myself, and not being able to see again because of the layers, like really the beauty of each and every person's soul, which the inner world shows you also how to appreciate the outer world once you're able to see it. So I would say it's a very real relationship. It's kind of like, okay, like sometimes I'm more, so I know when to be tough on myself and when to be kind, always, kind, but I know when I'm trying to pull a fast one and it's like, okay, no, you really do have to get up and do this. Other times I know that it's okay to relax into the next big thing and allow room and space for things to come my way. And so it's kind of like a flowy dynamic that is quite neutral. And I guess, the present moment gives inputs and then you kind of process them. And, it's like I have a buddy, it's me, me and myself. So,
Yeah, and then we're humans, right? So we always hear that inner voice with us that's like telling us lies or saying, "Oh, you're not good enough." "Oh, why didn't you do that a little bit better?" Now, do you come across that still? And if you do, how do you handle that self-criticism and that self-doubt?
well, knowledge is power. So we like to criticize the mind. And I did resonate with that initially a lot. Like, the mind is a great slave, but a terrible master. But, at the same time, according, in the universal laws and principles, the universe is mental. So there's something beautiful about the mind, because without the mind, we wouldn't be able to translate and comprehend all of this information that tells us to stay away from the mind, but it's the mind allowing us to talk about it. So, and, when we have moments like that of self criticism, which fewer and fewer, I can catch them or I can see them or I understand when they're coming in, but of course they do. Again, because if I stayed at, we can't stay at home all day where things are predictable and like usual, we hit the real world and things happen. And you know, but it's important to remember that um, we're not the voice that's talking, we're the voice that listens. So when we're listening to all of this, these stories that we're telling ourselves, they're really just stories. One of 100 different ways we could be telling the story. And so um, it happens. And when it does, it's just a bit of reframing and redirecting. And at the very least, being aware that it's taking place and being like, okay, gosh, all right, Alessandra, like, you're really tough on yourself today. All right, did you say everything you needed to say? Are we good? Because beyond that, let's remember who we are. So yeah, how does that
Yeah.
sound?
And you bring up a good point. I love because my mindset coach told me, she was like, this is during the time I didn't have a recovery coach. I didn't have a sobriety coach. It was just mindset coach. And she was like, you need to tell your story differently. I'm like, what do you mean I need to tell my story differently? I'm just telling the story as I know it. She's like, it doesn't have to be that way. I said, okay. She's like, whatever you're saying, reframe it. It's just like that once like this is going to sound cliche, once a door closes, another one opens. It's like in the similar context like that. And then talking about reframing your mindset, the reframing the mindset changes everything. It's just, you just change one word or one phrase or a phrase, and it does make a difference because our words are so powerful. However we speak, whatever we say out there to the universe actually can manifest. So we have to be careful sometimes.
Exactly. And I think the more you're conscious of that, the more you're sensitive to seeing those kinds of results. Um, if you're just like kind of blindly like cynical and like, in your own world and not yet fully awakened to it, then it's sort of like, well, you've already got so much stuff piled up that like that one extra comment may or may not do so much. But when you really start going, digging deep and seeing beauty around you, within you, and what you really truly are capable of being and feeling, then it becomes even more important to have that responsibility towards ourselves and the field around us of what we put in and out, because it can be a lot more powerful when it comes from um, this sort of frequency, I think, or vibra, whatever we want to call it, wherever you reach. I think it's much more important to be careful when you know better. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And speaking about universal laws and principle, which universal law has had the most profound impact on your life and why?
Well, I would say the principle of gender. And by the way, my book actually does go through all of the laws of the Kabbalion. And so it's like an exploration of relationships with the self, with others, so friendships and work relationships and strangers. And then it goes into the universal laws. And then it goes into energy and the, manifestation, overused term, but in general, we know that, and then romantic relationships. So it's like the whole set. And for me, I think what I really truly resonated with was um, the law of gender. So the fact that there is, we're all we all contain aspects of male and female within us, and so being feminine doesn't mean dropping the masculine. It means wielding both powers, perhaps in a feminine way, but knowing also when to, pull your teeth out and walk into a boardroom, or, do what you need to do. And for me, when I was in corporate initially, like I was very much in my masculine. So and then when I explored spirituality, I very much went into my feminine. And so then, knowing that actually we are wired to be both, or to hold both, and actually, I my a very dear friend of mine and coach split it up even further to four, so two masculines and two feminines within us, and that is um, and I think it's interesting. I like sometimes looking at it this way. And that is that, the feminine sides within us are like, one is like the sexual mistress, like the sensuous, like temptress, and like, in her own power. of sensuality. And then the other one is the caring mother type that makes food and wants to take care of, be of service to the family and bring everybody together. And those two feminine sides are within us, as well as, the male who, is very much like off to battle, into the war, like going to go deliver and manifest and be a salesman, and the male who listens and the male who's empathetic. So if we can merge all of these sides within our own selves, then I think we can have a balance and not have to like refuse one of them.
Yeah, it was funny because I was just talking to my husband about this literally last night. So it's funny that we're talking about this right now. And I was like, I need to tap in more into my feminine side. I'm acting a little bit too masculine because sometimes I come across like, I mean, I won't do it like right now, but at home, it's like I get like a little tough because, and I think it's my mom because my father passed away when I was a baby and I didn't really grow up with the proper father figure. And my mom had to play the roles both mom and dad. So I saw a lot of her masculine energy as well because she had to take care of the bills. She had to get us, two babysitters, and she was like, go, 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 go. And she had to be the provider. However, she did have that nurturing side when she was at home, the loving side. I didn't see the promiscuous side ever on that side. Maybe I wouldn't want to as your mom, But I mean, in order for us to
Yeah, that's
find
part
a
of
mate,
that.
yeah, in order for us to find a mate, we do need that, like, not promiscuous, I guess, but more of that seductive side, that like that.
That's
And
the
then
word.
I was thinking promiscuous. I'm like, the definition of promiscuous is having more than sexual partners, but I guess that could work out too. Whatever. Anyway, so so and he was actually more on his like more feminine side, where he was more listening to me, and he was more like calm and had his change of voice. So I totally agree, and I totally happy that you brought that up because it is important for us to hold both masculine and feminine side, and just have a balance, like the yin and the yang. There's a balance, masculine and feminine is always like the opposite of something.
There is. I mean, especially in this, it's all about that
To-
balance. And then the beauty and the paradox, which I love paradoxes, that reality exists, and then above it is also a reality where it's all one anyway, so all paths converge. But I want to share with you a really cute practice if you want to connect with any of those four sides of you.
yeah.
um, it's very simple. It's just find any songs that remind you of one of these archetypes, and then dance and play and sing into the song and just connect with that part of you. So, whatever song you might find that might remind you, like Arabian Nights or something, seductive and exactly the word that we said. And, or you can look for, a beautiful song about love and family. And then you can find, a rap song, like, for the strong male energy. And then you can find, John Mayer for the listening type. And then you just listen to each song, but actually put yourself in the song, as you're listening to it, and then see how the part within you resonates with that energy, and just like welcome it, call upon it, and let it sit with you. And so,
Yeah. The frequency is important, and that's exactly what I do. When I'm feeling sad, like I will go ahead and take a drive. And when I take my drive, I will go ahead and listen. I love like electronic music. I don't have so many words in them. Some words are cool, but I just love getting into the zone. But I do pay attention to the road. I am very careful. I am a defensive driver. Although I've been in 6 car accidents, none my fault. That's probably why I'm also a defensive driver. But getting into that zone and getting that frequency, that is your soul speaking to you, and you're feeling pumped up and you're like, yeah, I'm ready to go. That is your soul speaking to you. It's like, hey, we're here.
and you can be everything. You can really be everything. I mean, anything that's around us, um, is a reflection of who, if we want to, can be a reflection of us in a beautiful way. So,
Totally. Now, are there any misconceptions or misunderstandings you think people have about any of like universal laws? Because people will say they're God's laws, and some people are like, well, they're just made up by man. Like, what are your opinion? What's your opinion on that?
you know, I sort of don't think I even, so if people feel that way, everybody's allowed to feel how they want to feel, for sure. Whatever works for anyone. And, that's fine. I have found, that these hermetic principles that have been in existence since, like, I think 1300 BC, I want to say. Um, there's some real wisdom behind it. And, a lot of the modern day advice that we see on social media reflects some version of that. So we often talk about manifestation, or like these kinds of concepts. And for example, I think with the law of polarity, or where it's like, again, what we were saying before, like left and right, or dark and light, or sadness and happiness. As long as we're in this world of duality, the quickest way to shift one of these states is to call upon its opposite. And this is something that, maybe someone doesn't believe in the universal laws. Maybe they believe in hard work. Maybe they don't believe in going with the energy. And they really, really, really drive something to the end so that they can get it accomplished. And that's, again, if that works for them, I've seen a lot of suffering that way. And especially in the business world and in higher levels, where people just like, I got to get that deal. It's like, I'm like, what is it costing you? You're not sleeping for 2 weeks. You're not with your family. You're in meetings until 11 p.m. Turns out the boss is corrupt. Like, why are you investing in this company? Get out of it. It's a bad energy. Like, forget about the money. It will come back in some other way, So, but people want to, let them learn, and it's perfectly okay both ways. It's about what you can tolerate. So, I can only share what's worked for me, and what works for me is understanding all the signs that come up in the world around me, and being able to apply them in my own language and incorporate them into my daily decisions. And sometimes I change my mind about something really quickly. And, it might be a big thing. It could be a trip that seemed great at the time, and suddenly I'm feeling and hearing and understanding that it's not in the right energy any longer. And so, without fear or ambition, I just let go of my plans, and I trust that, the better things are coming through. And so I think for the skeptical mind, the mind that has not maybe fully experienced some of these types of synchronicities, or notice them, it can seem a little bit like wishy-washy, and it's hard to prove it. But when you experience it, you do, because you just know. So
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And like, everyone's path is different, here on Earth. Everyone is experiencing their own life experiences and journey, and like I said, trials that are happening. What are some things that people will start recognizing once they have a spiritual awakening? Because I know mine, what came in, like when I started having my mindset mentor, and I started thinking differently and thought like, hey, you know what? I don't have to believe whatever my mind is telling me. I don't have to think that way. I don't have to always believe whatever's on TV. I don't always have to believe what I don't always have to do what my friend, Jackie is telling me to do. I really need to go ahead and listen to myself and my heart and feel exactly what I am supposed to be aligned to. And then I started, and then 2020 came, and I actually was happy about 2020 in a weird, crazy way. I did lose some uncles, unfortunately, and I know it's been a tragic moment for a lot of people, and I, I can relate. However, that day, I felt very happy when my husband told me he was coming home, that they were closing down his job, and I was like, I felt like there was going to be some type of energetic shift here on Earth. The 3D is going to be going to be going to 5D. I felt I felt like this joy, this like happiness. And that was really when I had that spiritual awakening, like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? And then I just went through rabbit holes and rabbit holes and rabbit holes and felt ugly, sick, happy, grateful. And then I'm at a different place where I'm just in awe here. And what are some, like I was mentioning, like, what are some things that, or things people are noticing once they're going through like some type of spiritual awakening?
First of all, anyone going through a spiritual awakening, and welcome. It's good luck, tread lightly. It's beautiful because the challenges that come up, when you watch them transmute and leave your side, or when you learn a method that helps you do these things, uh, it's really relieving and freeing and empowering, really. um, I was so I think my awakening took place without yet having met a coach. So I had just been meditating, and suddenly this love and this realization that I really don't need anything to make myself feel good besides myself. So I don't need, I had, my story. Everybody's got a story. So of course um, I was always like, I always enjoyed therapy. Actually, I did it as a life coach. It was like a nice way it was kind of like a band-aid, I would say, because when you're just talking things out, it's really just like a very superficial layer of release. And it's not a solution. So, um, anyway, so I think in my case, my first realization was just like, holy moly, like I am it. I am the sauce and the chips and the mouth that eats it. Like I am all of these things. And it was like super cool. Um, and then, it's nice, I think, in the first few months, I think I had like a lot of bliss and found my routine, and, got really, really mindful around me, and, um, just started living with this new perspective that if I needed to, and had anchored this love within myself, that I could call upon it throughout the day if I had forgotten that it was there. And it wasn't easy at first. It took some time, but it got closer and closer to to where I am at today. Um, and that's when the real challenges happen. That's when life really throws curveballs at you. That's when you start like dealing with like your story, your soul story. Like you don't know what's hitting you. You're like, okay, where's this from? Like, what do I need to clear in this moment? How is this related to something that's that and so again, it's beautiful to have the awakening, and also life is both light and dark. So there's going to be, until we reach a place where we're all hopefully one day um, in a better place. At this present moment, there's going to be still things that come up that are going to be quite challenging, because we're also dealing with ancestral stuff, and we're dealing with all of the accumulation
Mm.
of unacknowledged maybe pain here, and traumas that have taken place in the past. So but for me, it was self-love. For me, it was just super feeling good in my body. I don't think I had felt that way my whole life. So um,
Is that where
it's
Holy
intangible.
Shivers comes in?
So yes and no. So in a way, that is what it is. So Holy Shiver, I later Googled it after I had already been using it for some time, because my friend and I came up with it also as a joke. It was supposed to sound like holy shit, and we were we were playing around with meditations, and we wanted to create. He was like, you should create some ironic ones, because I was always like kind of like a sarcastic person. Like that was my thing, my edge. Um, and still is, but different. And so I created these meditations. He's like, you should be called Holy Shiver. And I was like, that is great, because I'm already laughing. So perfect. So at first it was a joke. Again, like life is not that serious. But then I realized that it also represents that moment of deep revelation, or, shift in something when you're experiencing a spiritual process. And maybe you do have a shiver in your body, or you do just like, or like, whatever, maybe even an activation of sorts. So that's where the name comes from. Yes.
It's like the Holy Spirit activate. I don't know if you ever seen those reels on like you not
Oh,
YouTube,
yes.
but Holy Spirit, activate. Yeah, and you do get that shiver. You do get those goosebumps. You do get like those hair standing in the behind your neck, and that is part of it. That is your soul. I love that. So, are you a relationship expert then, since we're talking about relationships?
Observed a lot of relationships, and uh, I've been sort of, I think my unique background, within my own family, there was a lot of narcissism, there was a lot of emotional abuse generationally. So it kind of already predisposes you to be like, you have to be a relationship observer to survive. Um, and then, in addition, throughout my life, until I uh, exposed and healed certain sides of me, I also called in experiences that reflected, what I had seen. Because of course we're kind of vibing in that energy, so it's coming to us again, or we're attracting that, or it feels familiar to us. Um, so at first it was like that. So then, so I've just had a wide array of experiences, dating and just like friendships that needed to have higher, bigger, stronger boundaries, and all of those things that happen when we study the other side of relationships. And I've always given advice to my friends. I've always been the one who gives advice, and so I guess I'm an observer. I call myself an observer because I'm not. I'm more working as a business coach, but at the same time, I think something is happening with the relationship stuff in my future. So we'll stay tuned on that.
Oh yeah. Well, in any relationship, we have to have a relationship with our clients, with our
Oh, totally.
colleagues, and then of course those romantic relationships are very important. But how would you differentiate like a healthy relationship versus like a toxic relationship? And this could be in the range from romance to like friendships to even like siblings.
So this one is simple. It's whatever relationship doesn't alter the state of who you are. So that's the quickest way to tell, and that's the quickest way to tell. And like you said, in any dynamic. So if you're dating someone and suddenly you're afraid to say a certain thing or afraid to express yourself, even in a micro way, even if it's like, I don't want to ask this question. Well, why? If you want to ask it, just ask it. Or with a friend, maybe a friend is calling a little too often or asking a bit too much. And it's like, okay, why am I doing all of this for this person? So when you can observe yourself, once again, it goes back to yourself. Um, and it's nothing to do with the other person. Everybody's here to help us learn. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all the people who have reminded us what it's like to love ourselves. But when you notice there's a shift in how you are behaving, then that's when you should see, is it me or is it them? I mean, because of course there's still a trigger within us that's being triggered, because ultimately, no matter who it is, we should be able to, maintain that state. But some people's energies are stronger than others, and sometimes, it's up. We have to discern whether it is time to, you know,
Say,
exit people.
see you later, sucker.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding.
Take a peaceful boundary once we've understood the lesson, or proceed. So.
Right. Yeah, because I've been in so many toxic relationships, friendships as well. And I noticed once I said goodbye, I mean, I still have, even in my drinking days, I still have friends that remained my friend to this day but it's a different relationship now. It's not the same relationship, but they're still considered my friends because they've seen me through like my worst and were there for me. They've been there when I'm not my best, we're all growing every day, but at my higher level, my higher self, I should say, and they're still there. But some of the other friends I had, like, you know what, get out of my life, because they were just bringing me down. Their energy was just, ugh. I just like I said, see you later. And then I'm noticing now, like in my, because this is my second marriage. This marriage now is so beautiful. Like, I mean, of course, we're going to have our ups and downs, and that's just part of our growth together as a husband and wife. But it is so much better, and a lot of it has to do with he is a godly man, and he's very spiritual, and He loves the kids. You know, we have both kids from each our previous marriage. And we are just come together as a beautiful unit. And I think once I've taken out alcohol, out drugs, and learned about who I am, and he already knew who he was, and he had to go through his thing too. We were able to come together like two healthy people. Really, it makes a big difference. One healthy person and one not so healthy would still work. Two unhealthy people, it's not going to work. And that's where I was. I was unhealthy, and obviously I was attracting guys who were unhealthy as well.
But it's really a disaster. It's unfortunate because, you know, we all have good intentions. Well-intentioned people sometimes hurt themselves anyway. And so the journey is understanding that we have a right to exist and we're here for a reason. And it's not easy to be with someone who is, you know, to be someone and to be with someone who is maybe on a self-destructive side of things. I think I've realized I'm allergic to anyone who puts themselves through unnecessary self-suffering, and that category included. So anything that prevents us from living our fullest expression of freedom, which means, you know, in the case, and I've flirted with, I would say, substance things. You know, I think in my case, I guess like I could tell my intention behind it was not, you know, was not for the joy of experiencing a cocktail, like I said before. And you know, I've been in some relationships where I'm like, wow, like maybe I'm drinking a little too much. Like maybe it's like I don't want to deal with certain things, and it's not a fun spiral to go down because, you know, you want to, it just somehow it keeps going. So um but I forget what my train of thought was here, but it was something about being with, well, you want to be with someone who can hold you accountable and who props you up and who sees you for who you are and for your potential. And um you know, in my case, like now I really just like it, again, it's from this whole journey that drinking isn't appealing to me anymore. It isn't appealing to me because it blocks my channel. So it's like, okay, do I want to have like wine? I mean, I don't even eat meat anymore, which is ridiculous because I used to eat like, you know, steak a lot. I loved my steak and red wine. And, you know, now it's like, okay, I'm going to block my channel and I'm going to get hormones in my body that I don't want. Like, you know, maybe like every 6 months is okay. Like, or like I have this rule where it's like, you know, if it costs more than my outfit, I'll have a glass. And if I'm at a wedding, I'll have some. But it's really, it's so much easier to go from a blank slate and to know, to not have to like make that decision of like, should I drink or should I not drink, you know? And then it's like, okay, life is simple that way. um
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that too, because I noticed in my past relationships, I always felt like I needed to drink to be, I guess, more confident in myself. You know, I can then, I felt like I could have been more myself, but I wasn't even myself, you know. Now people are thinking that I've been drinking, and I'm like, whoa, 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 I haven't drank any alcohol in like almost 6 years now. This is just me naturally. I'm just on a natural high. This is me drinking.
I agree. Yeah, you are glowing, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yourself as well. I can always see when everyone is like, when I go hop on these podcasts and I have it on video, I'm like, oh my goodness, I already know they're awesome and amazing. I always sense it. Yes. And I'm so excited that you actually have a listener's gift.
I
You
do. I
have,
have a, yes. So I have 3 free meditations that are more like guided journeys that they can download on my website, which is holyshiver.com/get free meditations. And as well as I'm putting together this summer, actually, I'm releasing one in a couple of days as well, just a few other meditations on YouTube, which are more experimental. So they can view my channel on YouTube, which is Holy Shiver. And of course the book, if anybody's interested in reading the book, it has a lot of prayers behind it, a lot of good intentions, and the idea is for to give a little bit of an uplift and some universal truths that that sometimes we need to hear twice. Maybe we knew them, but sometimes it's good to hear them again.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited to read your book. All right. Is there anything else you would love to share with the audience? Or they can also find you on
Oh, well,
Instagram?
I'm on Instagram on Holy Shiver, Holy_Shiver. And well, I think the only other thing I would like to say is like, which has rung true for me lately, is like, don't be afraid to be a paradox. Don't be afraid to embrace all sides of yourself and um, welcome every side of you as if you were welcoming a guest into your house. And so, even if it's fear or pain or discomfort or anxiety or depression, like that's fantastic. Let them come in. Let them have a seat. You'll see how eventually they'll feel awkward and they'll leave, and then other people will come and it'll be happy. Which is a little bit stemming from Rumi, but I also made it my own and it works really well. So yeah, just enjoy life and the paradoxical existence we are in.
Yeah, and don't take life so seriously.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being on my show today, Alessandra.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.